Welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital. I'm here with Andrew Hippert from Techstar. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Sydney. Hey, everyone. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. So,
Okay.
Andrew,
I
tell us.
found this on the web for however.
I don't know what that was. So, Andrew, tell us about what you do specifically at Techstar and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, for sure. So my role, I've been with Techstars for about 5 years, going on six. Started in 2019. Helped spin up the first of its kind dedicated sports and entertainment accelerator in Indianapolis, Indiana. Which, if you haven't been there, it's one of the best sports ecosystems in the world. Really, it's a town, it's a city that knows how to do sports. So it was a perfect location for us to launch our sports entertainment accelerator. So I've done five programs through the sports accelerator with our six LPs there, all the major sports properties, the Indiana Pacers, the NBA, the Indianapolis Colts, the NFL, state of
I found
Indiana.
this on the web for.
I don't know why my Siri is acting up here.
Okay. It's no big deal.
My executive assistant wants to chime in. Through the state of Indiana, it's an incredible sports town. And so we've been doing that for 5 years. We've done 57 investments there. Companies have raised a little north of $100 million in outside capital. So we're really good at getting our companies funded, which is what we sort of take pride in. And then just last year, my team took over one of two New York City programs. So New York City is one of the most active ecosystems for venture and startups, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware of. And we run one of two category and vertical agnostic accelerators. So we're investing in B2B, B2C companies, anything from health tech, prop tech, fintech, legal tech, CPG. We basically touch really everything and anything that looks interesting and has a really strong founding team, which is what we sort of over index on. So
Yeah,
I'll stop there. We just had our New York City demo day recently.
I
We had
know. I was there. It was great.
there. Yes, thank you for your support and for attending. We had about 400, 500 or so folks that heard all of our companies pitch over at Google. Our friends at Google allowed us to use their beautiful space, and it's all good. Life is good. Now we're just trying to help them get funded. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
all
So, I
about.
mean, I already know that from being there that, a number of companies already were funded by the time they graduated from Techstar. So, in terms of what you do as as an investment principal, how is it that you are vetting these different kinds of startups at the early stage who are in so many different kinds of categories? So, if you were a CPG investor, you look at XYZ kinds of KPIs, their CAC, they're different kinds of things
Yeah,
versus if you were in enterprise SaaS. So in
yeah.
terms of how you are keeping yourself disciplined, having as few biases as possible, but also having to research in all of these different industries, when you have an influx of new people coming into the cohort, what is part of your kind of decision criteria as someone who kind of casts such a wide net?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and yeah, we're very much generalists, and we're certainly we don't ever really want to, like, if I know more about your industry and your founder, then that's probably not a good thing. So
That's a
we
good
are
KPI.
yeah, so we are oftentimes we are not the subject matter expert in those particular categories, but I think the common thread really, Sydney, in all the investments that we make is this sort of concept of a founder market fit. Like we're looking for founders that have a really unique insight into the problem that they're solving. They have in a lot of cases sort of real world experience, experiencing that particular pain point or that particular problem, whether it's in healthcare or fintech or sports and media. It was interesting. I was just having a conversation with one of our sports portfolio companies in Ireland last week, and it's actually our first company to exit, which is really exciting. And a company called Kairos from Belfast, Northern Ireland, UK, and sold to a sort of a behemoth in the space, a competitor, Teamworks. And they were just this annoying company that kind of stuck around and was poaching clients from them, and just and they finally get to a point where Teamworks made Andrew and Gareth an offer that worked really well for an 8-figure outcome. Really happy for those guys. But a perfect example of Andrew, who is a former Irish rugby national player and was building a company, sort of an athlete management software system, and essentially the problem that he was solving is, as a player, you have so many things to focus on, and most oftentimes it's the little things that you miss out on. So, what color jersey am I bringing? What are the exercises I need to do that my strength and conditioning coach assigned to me for this week? Or where's the playbook that one of the assistant coaches had sent to us? It was in some email, but I can't seem to locate it. And so, Andrew created this application that sort of centralized all of the communication flow that players will have and sort of every step of the journey with their coaches, with their strength and conditioning folks, assistant coaches, each other, and it was a problem that he had experienced directly and personally as a player and as an athlete. And so that, to us, is really unique insight, and it's someone that can really kind of speak to that pain points from a very compelling perspective. And so we always look for, like, is there an unfair advantage that a particular founder has into the problem that they're solving? And then sort of the next step would be, is that a big enough problem? You want to look at market size, and not only is it a big enough problem, but is the market moving in a direction that is appealing? So is it moving quickly? And then B, is it sort of a hot sort of venture-y type of market?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're very attractive qualities in an investment for us. And most oftentimes, and I know you mentioned a lot of companies are funded kind of going through the program, and that's intentional. A lot of times we're the first institutional check into most of these companies. They've raised maybe some money from friends and family, or an angel syndicate, or maybe a small micro funders or something to that effect. But when they get into Techstars and we give them a small check, our value prop is we really can then take the brand and they can leverage the relationship that they have, and sort of, because fundraising is all about momentum. It's all about momentum and creating that momentum. And so having now the Techstars brand associated with your business, we can help you raise more money just off of the fact that you just got into Techstars New York City or Techstars Sports. And so we've had a lot of success with our portfolio companies. Say they come in raising 300 or 400K. In program, we're able to get you another 500 to 750K to $1 million, and that sets you up nicely. So if you have an open safe or an open note, you're talking to all these investors, and we have this concept that we teach our founders where you can sort of walk the cap up. You can walk your valuation cap up based on all these people that you're meeting, based on all the progress that you're making going through the program, the coaching, the advice, the mentorship. And so it's a formula that's worked pretty well for our founders, and it allows them to really, once they get through demo day, it's not a company that just has no capital and has no traction. It's a company that now has traction. They have a strong team. They have some funding because they were able to put together, a small kind of bridgey round in program that really sets them up to then go out and hit the larger market and really run a proper fundraising process. And so, long-winded answer there, but yeah, it's really, for us at this stage, it's almost less about traction and it's more about the strength of the founding team. Do you have someone that can build? Do you have someone that can sell? We don't want to just two MBA kids that are really smart, but they can't build any product. They can't code. We don't want two engineers that can't, have a conversation with another human being. So it's trying to find the right blend. And so a lot of times for us, we're over-indexing on the strength of the team.
Yeah.
We can teach you how to fundraise. We can teach you how to raise money. We can teach you how to, talk about valuation. We can help you build a good financial model, pitch deck. But, it's those intangible things that are sometimes hard. We can help you on traction. We can help you on BD. But the intangibles can be really tricky to find. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, no, that's a really great, thorough answer. It answered a few other questions. So in terms of how people who are going through, an accelerator program, it could be Techstar, it could be anything. It is very driven by the community, right? And so this is something that I thought about a lot, and just wanted to know, if you were not in an innovation hub and you were going to Techstar or you were going to any other accelerator, you would have a different set of mentors that you are heavily relying on to help you with BD, to help you with maybe not fundraising, or maybe it is fundraising,
Sure.
or to help you with sales operations, all these things. But what if you were in an area where there were no exited founders to be the mentors? What if you as Andrew can't actually go and approach other volunteer mentors in the community because they don't have XYZ kind of expertise, but they are still wanting to have a high quality Techstar program, but you have none of this other labor that you're hoping for. What does Andrew do?
Yeah, no, I think it was one of the sort of the original, kind of mission points for Techstars. Techstars wanted to be in a lot of these. This isn't an insult at all, but kind of sort of tier two markets. So markets that,
How dare
outside
you?
of, yeah, yeah, outside of just the Valley and LA, San Francisco, Boston, New York, like we all know those are great tech markets. But I mean, look at Indianapolis, right? Let's take a look at that as a
One of my favorite cities.
yeah, that's it. It's become one of mine. It really has. I can't say that when I was walking into this in 2019. I had been there maybe once for an NCAA compliance conference, which sounds
That sounds about right.
Sounds
Yeah.
about as boring it is about as boring as it sounds. But that's a market that had some success with Scott Dorsey, obviously, selling the exact target to Salesforce. So,
Yeah.
there was kind of this emerging ecosystem for a lot of enterprise SaaS, kind of B2B SaaS, given the success of Scott that Scott had, and of course it was a great sports town with the Pacers and the Colts and NCAA and the Motor Speedway and the Indiana Sports Corp. And so, I think Techstars saw that as a real opportunity on, okay, if we put an accelerator there in a market that is typically not producing a lot of unicorn companies, not producing a lot of exits. But I think one of the key factors, not only is a great sports town, it's got this emerging ecosystem, but there's a lot of great universities and colleges. Mm-hmm. And so like if you're building a business, or if you're an entrepreneur that wants to build a company and you're not in Boston or New York or San Francisco or LA, really leaning in heavily to your university resources and to the network that the university and college can create. One of the first things I did, Sydney, when I got to Indianapolis, Techstars was like, all right, go, here's the playbook and, good luck. Like we had to go put together all of our mentors. We had to, liaise with our partners. I'd never, like I said, I'd been in Indianapolis one time. I didn't know the folks on the ground that you needed to, build relationships with. But the first thing I did was go to all the universities. So I called IU, I called Purdue, I called Notre Dame. I went up and met with, John Henry, who runs the Notre Dame Idea Center. Matter of fact, I just talked to John this morning, and we've had a relationship with 5 years now. They've sent us some incredible candidates for operations associates and some great interns that have come out of there. We've advised some of their companies coming out of the Idea Center. So it's just like this really nice symbiotic partnership that we've had. And so I would say, if you're building in one of these tier two markets where it's hard to access capital, or it's hard to find other really good, founders or mentors that you can lean in on, find your university, your local university or college. If they have an entrepreneurship program, if they have an engineering program, they have sort of an MBA program. What I did is I started to talk to all of the folks that ran these programs. They sent me really talented kids. I was able to surround the entrepreneurs that were coming through our program with a lot of talent just from the university pipeline. And so that's, I think, one thing that we were able to do in Indianapolis, which really helped. And, fast forward, we've basically had 10 to 15 interns each year from all the major Indiana schools, and schools outside of Indiana too. We had a couple kids from Harvard, kids from Stanford and Texas and Michigan and whatnot. But, it's surrounding our companies with a lot of talent. That's a great way to build an ecosystem. It's a great way to build.
But it's at the innovation level for the startups. So they also have to be at that level as opposed to, raising their post-seed rounds, for example.
Yeah, totally. And, what Techstars does a really good job of is they have these founder catalyst programs where they go into these markets and they partner with, whether it's corporates or not, NGO, nonprofit organizations, or, the leaders in the community, if you want to call them sort of startup leaders in the community. And they'll come in and they'll say, hey, we'll run sort of a startup weekend or a startup weekend. We'll put together all the content. We'll bring folks in from even outside of the network that can, take some really smart, talented kids and say, hey, you're going to put together an idea for a business in 2 days. You're going to pitch the business. we're going to give you a bunch of feedback on the business with our judges and our sort of subject matter experts. And it plants a lot of these seeds in these ecosystems that, may be 2 or 3 steps removed from the major sources of venture capital. But I really think today, Sydney, you don't need to be in New York. You don't need to be in San Francisco or LA or Boston to build a really good business. I mean, like look at the guys in Belfast. I mean, that's not a tech hub. I mean, Indianapolis, I think, has become a real tech hub, for a sports tech hub for sure. Kind of given the work that the Accelerator has done and the strength of the founders that we've been very fortunate enough, and obviously the support from all the partners and the resources, so much so that the state doubled down and they created a sort of a follow-on entity called Sports Tech HQ that can invest now in companies coming out of the Accelerator, because ultimately, we're trying to connect talent with capital.
Yeah.
And you can have a lot of talent, but if there's no pipeline to capital, it's really hard to keep your founders motivated and keep your founders engaged, and especially keep your founders geographically stationed there, right?
So you were to say living, keep your founders alive.
Yeah, yeah, that too. But we had a real problem, City, like keeping founders in Indianapolis. We bring in these 10 great companies and we put them through 3 months of program. They meet all the parties, talk to the Pacers and Colts and the Motor Speedway and everything. And then at the end of the program, they pitch a demo day, and it's like, okay, great, all right, who's staying? And no one. We're all going back to New York. We're all going back to LA.
Yeah,
and
where their home is. But that makes sense.
Where their home is and their family is, but I don't say more importantly, because that's the most important thing. But some cases that's important, is that's where all the money was. That's where all the VC money was. But what we've been able to do in Indianapolis is create a community now where all of the Indiana and Midwest funds are now looking at Indiana as a sports tech town. And so they know if they want to invest in anything sports tech media related, they're going to look at Indiana, because there are companies that are now staying, building, hiring. And so it's exciting. There's a lot of momentum around that. Yeah. But yeah, and I think a lot of it, Sydney, it has to do with universities, like just really playing into the talent there.
That's a really smart move when you're like, I don't know where to go. This is where I guess I'll go. You could have been totally wrong and you wouldn't know yet until you ask, right? Which is the fun part about being an entrepreneur all over again. And so I'm sure that, all of your friends have asked you this question. And so just wanted to know kind of how you felt and what your experiences were when the different Techstar locations were closing. How did that affect Andrew? And, did you have a heartfelt speech with your team? I assume that you guys did a town square situation.
Yeah. I think, I know that Techstars, there's been some press out there about, sort of, I'd say pulling out, in quotes, because we're not really, maybe physically pulling out of locations like Chicago and Boulder and Seattle, but
and Canada.
I know. But you know what though? Techstar is still going to be even more active in a lot of those locales. We have a really strong eco dev department that supports our AIT, which is our accelerator investment team. We're really over indexing on a lot of our portfolio service resources. So for, one of the, piece of feedback that we get is, there's a lot of support for our founders and our companies while they're in program, but then when they get out of the program, it can be challenged. There's not the same level of engagement and support and resources. And so,
for sure. That's like a new grad situation though. So that's the same thing that happens everywhere, but it's the same, similar pain.
Yeah, for sure. And so, so I think Techstars is figuring out how do we continue to support as many companies as possible, but trying to create something that's really and truly scalable, an engine that can really scale, and kind of moving to this sort of, I say 4-city model, but like really over indexing on Boston, New York, and the East Coast, and then of course LA and San Francisco. And being able to still support as many companies, getting companies from Seattle and Boulder and Chicago, Indianapolis, these other markets, still being able to have founders that can represent those locales and mentors that are active in those communities. We still need those pipelines, because we're still going to be going into Boulder, we're still going to be going into Seattle, we're still going to be going into Chicago, to be able to take talent and put them through a Techstars Accelerator. Just how do we do this in a much more scalable way? And so, Yeah. So luckily, our relationship with our indie sports properties it won't be affected at least for this next year.
Mhm.
So
Well, and yours in New York, of course, because
yeah, and of course New York, yeah,
yeah.
it'll look a little different,
Mhm.
with the new 2.0 model, but it's still going to be, there's still going to be a lot of value for founders going through that New York City program. And the New York City ecosystem, as you know, Sydney, it's incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And so now we get to combine our networks with KJ's networks with the JP Morgan. And so yeah, we're able to, to sort of collaborate more and just provide even more resources for our founders going through programs. So I
Yeah.
think it's exciting.
And then was there one particular key learning you kind of had from that experience over the past, I guess, two months when this was all happening? Was there a particular learning lesson that you're like, I grew in this way?
Yeah. Oh, in terms of Techstars kind of shifting their model a little bit, or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the most important things in sort of in any relationship, whether it's personal or professional, it's just to try to over communicate and try to be very transparent.
Yeah.
And that's what we've really attempted to do. And I'm just kind of speaking from myself, my program team, Jordan, Elliott, myself, with our portfolio companies, we're still going to be here to support. It's going to look a little different,
Yeah.
and so I think because immediately when some of the announcements went out, we were of course getting
And
emails,
lots of questions.
lots of great. Yeah, what is this going to look like for me as an alumni founder, or for those founders that we were talking to, in the queue and in the pipeline? How does this, what is this going to look like for, for this summer, for the sports accelerator that I'm planning on applying to, or
Okay.
city for
Yeah,
next year?
that
And
makes sense.
so yeah, so I think it was just really just kind of communicating, letting founders know that there's still going to be lots of resources in place set up to help them build and scale their business. We're not moving away from the mission. Like our mission has always been to support as many companies and as many entrepreneurs from all different walks of life,
Yeah.
from all different geographical areas, as and try to scale that in the most efficient way. And this is just an opportunity for us, I think, try to more efficiently scale that mission. So like we're still going to be mentorship driven. We're still going to be founder aligned. We haven't changed our terms. We're not taking preferred versus common. Like we're still going to sit alongside our founders in the pref stacks. Like that, none of that is changing.
Yeah.
Which I think is reassuring if
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
so.
absolutely. But I think over communicating is a great lesson, especially for the founders that you're working with, because it makes
Yeah.
sense when you have times of like things you can't control, things that you personally can't
Yeah.
control. What is it that you do? You express the most transparent things that you can to your team that you're leading and to your clients. In this case, they would be the founders. And yeah, I know that I've had this like fascinating conversation with Andrew before in terms of that, like in terms of how you're seeing the ecosystem go forward in the modern day, in the next, like, let's say 10, 20 years. How do you find the model in terms of its sustainability and how it may or may not involve, maybe not Techstars, just like accelerators and incubators in general, when they're relying on things like volunteers to be mentors, and they're relying on things that are so cohort focused. So like every X amount of every 3 months, you have to be physically shifting and putting things in boxes, physically moving away, and then having more people come in. And then every cohort, you're then again, realigning with mentors who may be moving cities, maybe having babies,
Yeah.
maybe changing lives because they're not
Yeah.
real employees, right? And so
Yeah.
like what do you see in the next 20 years in terms of how these models, in terms of accelerators and incubators in general, can sustainably do this going forward? Because there's no scalable way to do any of these things that I just mentioned. But but I don't
Yeah.
know if this is something that you put more thoughts into more than I have to be fair.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. And it's hard. It's not an easy question to answer. And I think it might be a different answer for, each organization has to kind of look at it introspectively. I think it's interesting. I think before COVID, it was like if you ever even referenced doing some like a virtual accelerator, people would
Mhm.
shut you down right away. So
Yes.
it's all now it's just
They're like, is it fake?
yeah, right. Now it's just table stake. Like, there's always going to be like if there isn't a virtual element, you're actually missing out because you can't engage, maybe mentors that are outside of your direct sort of geographical market. So yeah, I think for us, the way we try to look at it is, we have all these 54 programs that all have their own program teams, all have their own independent mentor networks,
Right.
all have their own curriculum and content.
So
And
separate.
so separate, and it's very disparate, and they're all doing really good stuff, but how do you scale? That's hard to scale. And to
Yeah.
your point, that's really hard to scale. So
Mhm.
I think the new model is, like sort of having a team that is really focused on sourcing.
Mhm.
And you're going to be sourcing a lot of companies. Like
Great.
I'm sourcing a lot of deals. Maybe another principal from LA and Chicago are also sort of, maybe we're talking to the same company. What we found is, as you start to grow and scale, when you have all these disparate companies, maybe you're having conversations with the same founders, and you're getting founders are getting kind of mixed signals or mixed messages.
Right.
Like, why would I do LA and over New York, and if they're both agnostic programs? And so, it's like, it's in what's separate, like, why was New York better than LA? And, you don't want, program teams aren't going to throw each other under the bus. And so, it became kind of tricky to message that, and frankly, confusing. I had
Yeah.
companies reaching out to me and be like, hey, so I'm applying to your program. And I'm like, our program's not open. You must be talking about KJ's program, who runs the Spring New York. And
Oh,
yeah, so that, it was just headache and headache and headache. And so I think doing it this way, where you it's sort of a very clearly defined a team that's focused on sourcing, very clearly defined a team that's focused on sort of program content and operations and executing the actual curriculum. And then you have more standardized, like, we might be doing really good workshops on fundraising, and maybe Boston is doing really good workshops on product. And so how do we take the best workshops, the best pieces of content, the best curriculum? How do we take the best mentors and that strategically? Because I can't tell you how often we get hit up by companies that just say, hey, like, you're the sports guys, right? Like, I'm building a company in sports, but I'm going through an Austin program, and I need, can I talk to you guys? You guys seem like you know the sports market really well, and so how do we kind of combine all of those resources together in a machine that can work? And so I think my understanding is that, like, that was the thought process, I think, with our executive leadership team. And it's not dissimilar, I think, from even I used to work in pro sports. We had a team that would go out and sell either tickets or executive suites or groups or sponsorships, and then we had a team that, once that sale was processed, then they would get passed over to an activation, or a team that would take that relationship now and say, how do we really monetize, and how do you get the most value out of that you just paid to be a sponsor or a partner? And so I think kind of setting up
like a live CRM model. That way they just explain it.
Exactly. And I think that will enable us to then scale more effectively, have like, because I think one of the things that Techstars is really good is we have so much data, all this data in different industries, and found, like, we should be able to, if a founder comes to me tomorrow that went through our sports programs in 2020 and says, you know what, Andrew, like, we're shutting things down and I'm thinking about maybe my next thing, and I don't, do you know of anything that could be, I should be able to easily say, yes, I can share your resume, your profile with, what do you want to build in fintech, or you're a sports ticketing company. There's 15 other ticketing companies I've gone through, Techstars, accelerators, that I can connect you with. And so just being able to take this data, or like, if we get a solo founder that's like, I'm looking for a co-founder, someone that's technical, someone that lives in Boston, someone that, has X amount of years of experience, we should be able to then turn that around and say, here's, based on the network, here's 10 candidates that you should probably be talking to. And so I think there's a way that we can do a much better job of that. I think by streamlining the sort of operating system, if you will, kind of lack of term, I think we'll be able to effectively kind of meet those requests and those needs for founders.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Unlocking Venture Capital with Andrew. And thank you, Andrew, for your time. This was really great.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sydney. And thanks, everybody.